Welcome back to Bourbon Barrel Talk. Today's episode of Bourbon Barrel Talk is brought to you by the Burkhart Company. The Burkhart Company is one of the preeminent companies for kitchens, bathrooms, and bars. Their team can take your concept from design to build and then install. With almost 50 years experience, you can trust their team with all of your home and business projects. Call Andrew or one of his team members at 502-587-1538. Hello and welcome back to Bourbon Barrel Talk. I'm your host, Scott Minton. Today I'm sitting down in the it's my dining room today. So I got one of my buddies, one of my partners in crimes, Dan, one of my neighbors down the street. What's up, Dan?
Not a whole bunch. How about you?
Oh man, just living the dream. If I was any better, I'd be twins. One person can't have so much fun.
And I couldn't handle two of you anyway.
That's what my wife says. That's ironic. You're not even married to me, and she says that stuff. So I hear you. So this episode, we were going to talk a little bit about, I had a derby gathering, which we have a handful of people here, I guess would be the best way to put it.
No, a house full. Let's get it right.
It is a house full. I think we ended the count, and I think we were somewhere around 44 people.
I believe that. Between who was downstairs, and every time you came up here to get something to eat, there was as many up here as there were downstairs. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, we were at 44. I think was the count that we came up with, and I might be a little off, but it is what it is.
It sounds about right.
So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about cocktails, what we made for the day, and Dan was being quality control because he used to be a bartender back in the old days. I'm gonna have to hear some of these stories because we've never really talked about this before. So, and then while we're doing that, we're going to try a couple of bourbons. Dan's going to give us his opinion on a couple of things. We got a Starlight 5-year-old port, finished in a port barrel. And this one was selected by a group called Liquid Assets, a couple of friends of mine, and they like doing little private barrel selections, and they buy the entire barrel. There's only about 15 guys in the whole group, so they get quite a few bottles apiece.
You think?
You know what, though? When it's a good one, it's a good one. You want to have as many as you possibly can, so I'm going to dive in on this bad boy. I'm going to smell it real good, and you can tell me what you're smelling and what you're thinking, and kind of go from there. And I like the fact Dan's got a pretty good nose from what I can tell. So,
not as good a nose as yours, but I can generally pick out some of the flavors. You tend to pick out a little bit more than I do. My feeling about bourbon is more on the palate than it is in the nose.
Yeah. So this one's got a delicate nose. It's real fruit forward.
Yep, very fruit forward. I like the delicate part about it.
The port's coming through really strong, so I'm getting
that's probably where the fruit's coming from.
Yeah, like some stone fruit, almost like a plum or something dark. I don't know, man. Maybe almost like a fig too. But I don't know. Is fig a fruit?
Yes, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a fruit. I differentiate: if it's in the ground, it's a vegetable. If it's above the ground, it's a fruit. And there are some.
I think it has something to do with seeds too.
Could very well be.
Of course, I guess a persimmon, is that a fruit too?
That I don't know for sure.
I mean, it comes off a tree, has a seed in it, so I assume it's a fruit.
Isn't a fig a derivative of grapes?
I don't know, man.
I don't know either.
I'm not breaking out Google today either. That's what Matt and Josh are for. So,
and they're not here.
They're not here. They're missing all the fun. Oh yeah, that's good. Get a little bit of a like vanilla, a little caramel. Some of that fruit's pouring through.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing is, so you get a little bit of that port flavor off that, but it's not overwhelming, which I'm kind of surprised.
And I'll tell you, over the years when I've had bourbons that have been finished in other than just natural oak or charred oak, you do get part of the flavor. You do get some of it, but it unless it's been sitting in that barrel for a long, long time,
right,
that's all you're going to get. You're going to get a hint of it, but it changes the profile quite a bit. I had gotten a bottle. Not when we went to Starlight. The one down in Bardstown.
Was that the one we did at Lux Row, or was it?
I believe it was Lux Row, and they had one that was finished in a Burgundy barrel.
Gotcha.
And I had picked that up when we were down there, and that had kind of the same profile. You could taste it going in. It would linger just a little bit, and when it finished, it was almost gone by that time.
I'm trying to remember which one that was. It was like a Henry something.
I believe it was a Henry.
But I'm trying to remember which. I
That was a while ago too.
which one of those it was. I'm gonna have to look that up real quick. I said I wasn't gonna do Google, and here I am. I'm googling stuff. What are we doing? So Lux Row Distilleries, and this one. Let's see. It was the Davies County series, is what it was.
Yep.
So
Yeah, there was the Henry, the Davies County, and of course all the other ones that were on the Lux Row that actually weren't. They were bottled. I'm sorry. They were barreled here, and they were stored up in New Jersey. Is it that they?
I can't
There
remember.
was someplace else that they had where they.
So I know that Lux Row was owned by at that time the place out of St. Louis, Missouri.
That's what it was. St.
So
Louis.
maybe it was aged out in Missouri.
Yeah,
So
I think it was aged there, and then I'm not sure if they bottled it out there or not. I don't know that for sure.
right. Huh, I don't know. But this is pretty good. I mean, I'm enjoying it. I'm it's funny. I've always been such a big fan of high proof, high octane bourbons, and I'm getting a lot more comfortable with these low proof barrel strengths.
The lower proofs, and I agree with that. I'm like you. I've graduated, through all the proofs that you can think of, and if I go out and buy a bottle of bourbon, I'm generally looking at around 100 proof or higher. But there are bourbons that I'll get that'll be in the low to mid 90s, and they still have that kind of a smoothness to it.
Right.
And I think it has a lot to do with how it's aged, how it's barreled, what kind of care was put into making it, what the mash bill happened to be. But I'm not as snobbish today as I was, say, a year ago when it came to just strict high proof bourbons.
Right.
And regarding this one, I think you said it was 102.
Yeah, 102.2. 5 years old.
It's got a good little hug to it.
It does. Yeah, I mean, it drinks that proof. So, I mean, I would say that this was 100, 102, 105. So, I mean, it drinks at true proof. But it's definitely got some really nice, delicate fruit notes. It's just a solid pour overall. So, let's talk cocktails. So, wait a minute. First, you have to tell me that. When were you a bartender? What did you do? What did you work at, like the local watering hole up in the Northeast? Or tell me this story because you've never told it before.
Well, there's a couple of ways to look at this. The most bartending I ever did was at this little bar that I used to go to up in Western New York, and it was just something that just happened one day. Now you got to understand,
Western New York.
Yes, actually, Jamestown, New York.
Jamestown. Is that near Buffalo?
It's about 60 miles south of Buffalo.
Okay.
Or almost on the Pennsylvania border.
Gotcha. All right. I'm just getting clarification geographic.
Not a problem. But I used to frequent this watering hole all the time. And one day, somebody said, why don't you turn around here and start bartending? And I did. Now, you got to understand something. This was mostly a beer joint and a shot joint. Mixing a lot of cocktails didn't come into it. So if somebody wanted a gin and tonic, I could handle that. If somebody wanted to have a whiskey sour, I could think about it and come up with something, and they wouldn't care because they were too damn drunk to notice anyway. But that was pretty much the extent of being a bartender, as it were. Now at home, over the years, I've learned to put together a few. The ones that I remember most would be Manhattans, either a regular Manhattan or a sweet Manhattan or a perfect Manhattan. It didn't matter. And the story behind that is before I came here, most people might remember that I'm not originally from this area. And before I came here, I was...
The accent didn't give it away now, I promise.
No. I was a whiskey drinker before I came here.
Scotch, Canadian whiskey.
Mostly, Scotch and Canadian whiskey. That's how I got into drinking Manhattans, was because of the whiskey. Obviously, when I came here, when in Rome, didn't have whiskey anymore. Well, of course, it's here, but started drinking bourbon. I had a friend of mine who used to drink perfect Manhattans, and if you don't know what that is, it's basically a Manhattan made with bourbon as opposed to being made with whiskey. And I guess that's probably what started me going down the bourbon road. But once I got here, there was just a lot more exposure to bourbon, a lot more of that kind of flavor profile, and it is so distinctly different than a Scotch or a Canadian, especially a Canadian whiskey. An Irish whiskey, it's much different than that, but to me, that's probably closer to what a bourbon is than what a Canadian whiskey is. Canadian whiskey tends to be very, very light. Scotches are the type, it all depends on which ones you get. You got blended, you get single malts, you've got very longly aged single malts. You got some Scotches that are actually finished in a bourbon barrel.
Yeah, a lot of them are finished in bourbon barrels, yeah.
Which I didn't realize until I saw that many, many years ago. But you'll learn, your palate changes.
I call them earthy.
You don't like Scotch anyway, so what do you say?
Well, I mean, so, and that's why. I mean, to me, they're extremely earthy. Like, you get that peat flavor, you get, and it's a joke when I say it, but it's almost like, you take an old leather flip-flop, you throw it in the lake, and then you pull it out, 4 weeks later, and you lick it, and you're like, that's Scotch. Well, and it's definitely not for me. I've grown on Armagnac, I've grown on Cognac, but
and those
Scotch is still just not my jam.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Scott, my experience has been you either like Scotch or you don't. There's nobody in between on that.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of people who have tried it and they just ugh. But
yeah. I've tried a couple that I was like, not too bad. It was more smoky than peaty. Mm-hmm. And I don't mind the smoky flavor, that subtle smoke. I don't want it overly smoked, but I had a couple that were that way, and they were pretty good. But I mean, still not something I'd be like, oh, I want that over a decent bourbon. It just wouldn't happen.
No, and I wouldn't do that today either. I always drank Scotch with a little bit of ice. Again, I was on whiskey before I got here, but always drank Scotch over ice. Mostly drank whiskey as a cocktail. Never drank that neat as we do with bourbons today. And occasionally I'll have a little bit of ice in the bourbon, but it's generally just enough to more to cool it down a little bit than anything else.
So in Northeast, were they like SoCo people, like Southern Comfort, or were they like Crown Royal?
Crown Royal, Kessler's was a big one that was up in that area. You'll still find a lot of Canadian Club and a lot of Canadian Mist and stuff like that. Yeah, Canadian Mist, I could never wrap my hands around it. To me, that was that just had a sweet profile to it. It was just
syrupy almost.
Yeah.
I'm 100% with you. It's weird how bourbon is so, and it's not as bad that way today as what it was, even 5 or 10 years ago, where, I mean, you get north of, basically kind of southern Indiana. I mean, bourbon goes away.
Yep.
It's all Canadian whiskey at that point.
Yeah, the people that you find, north of here, or you get up into the Northeast that are drinking bourbon are doing it because they read somewhere, or maybe they were in Kentucky and they tried it. And they realize that this is something that I got to think about. I'll tell you a little story. My brother-in-law lives down in Florida, and I think you might remember this. And he was trying to get his hands on some bourbon that he couldn't find down there. It was just not available. And I remember I'd asked you where to get it. It was in a round base bottle with a long neck. I can't remember the name of it now. I may be able to find it on my phone.
It wasn't Blanton's, was it?
No, it wasn't a Blanton's.
You said a long neck, and I was like, well, maybe he was confused long neck for a short neck, but
no, it
round
had,
bottle.
It had a round. It had a really cool looking bottle. It had a flat base. Hang on a second, I may be able to.
That's fine. You look it up. So cocktails. While you're looking it up, made what 5-6 different cocktails?
Yeah,
at Derby.
I remember a bunch of mules.
A bunch of mules, yeah.
Bunch of mules.
My bourbon Ritas.
Oh yeah. Oh, bourbon Ritas went over big time.
They were gangbusters. I was super happy with that because it was one of those things that I kind of came up with it late Wednesday or Thursday night, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna make a bourbon Rita for Derby, and I talked to one of my girlfriends, all in quotations. One of the friends, Sarah's been on the podcast before, but Sarah's a mixologist. Like, she's like a high end bartender.
Okay.
Not just a regular old bartender. And not that there's anything wrong with regular bartender, but she's got chops. I mean, she's really, really good. But anyway, she's like, hey, these are the things I would play with in that ball realm or in that ballpark, and I used some of her ideas and a couple of my own, and just poof. The next thing you know, Bourbon Radio was born. So
now, did you mix that with bourbon and tequila?
no, I mixed it with bourbon and triple sec.
Okay, instead of the tequila. Okay.
Yep. So instead of I just basically got rid of the tequila, and I thought I had some Grand Marnier, but I didn't. So I had to go with the cheap stuff. I put a little triple sec in there, but they turned out excellent. They still had the right
Oh
flavor.
my God, they were coming after you left and right.
Dude, I mean, I must have made 10 pictures of that stuff, man.
At least,
For
at
shakers.
least.
So, but then to each their own. But that, and then I made a modified Kentucky Mule. So I put a splash of sweet and sour on top of my mules. So I don't think that many people realize that that's what I was doing, but I was putting a splash of that in there.
No, I didn't notice that. I mean, I saw you make several mules, and I didn't notice the sweet and sour.
Yep, and then I made a few Manhattans, and then I didn't make any Manhattans. I made old fashions. I was gonna say I don't make Manhattans because I don't do vermouth, but
well, it's a matter of how much vermouth you put in it.
so I've never found a vermouth I've liked.
What have you tried?
I mean, I've tried a few different ones. I don't know names, because of the fact that I don't pay a ton of attention to vermouth. But and everybody says maybe I've never had a really, really, really like high end good vermouth, and maybe that's what my problem is.
When you're using vermouth, and in this case, it's a sweet vermouth, which is
Right.
probably what throws you off. You've got to be very careful because you can really put too much in it, and it's really, really too sweet.
It's just overpowering.
It overpowers it, and especially if you're doing it in a perfect Manhattan, you don't want to overpower the bourbon.
Right.
You want to be able to taste that bourbon, and you want to have just a little side to that. So it's a matter. I think the classic Manhattan is 1-to-1.
Okay.
Vermouth to bourbon. When I used to make a lot of Manhattans, it was probably closer to 3-to-1/2. Just enough vermouth in there just to give it that taste.
Right.
And then you're tasting the whiskey or the bourbon or whatever it is you're using in there.
3 to 1/2.
Well, yeah, it's like making a martini
Yeah.
or a very dry martini.
Yeah.
It's either a splash of vermouth, which is again dry vermouth as opposed to sweet, or you get out your spray bottle and you just spray the glass, and then add the gin or the vermouth. There it is.
Spray bottle, huh? You found it?
Yep.
Oh, Willet. Pot
Willet.
still.
Pot still. Okay, there we go. Yeah, he wanted that, and I was able to find it for him.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he said he couldn't find it or if it was stupid expensive.
Maybe it was probably the latter. It was probably just dumb expensive. Because for some strange reason, some things in Florida are just really overly priced, even though it's a controlled state, which never makes any sense to me.
Yeah.
But I think they have some controlled state stores, and some are like freelance, like dudes can charge whatever they want. So it's the wild, wild west down there in Florida, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Let's not get political. Come on.
No, I'm not saying by political. I'm just saying like I think some store owners follow the rules and some don't. I think it's just kind of the wild, wild west. So, all right, got an Old Forester barrel strength here. This is from Steak and Bourbon. It's 130 proof, and all these come in around 5-6 years old. So it's definitely Old Forester. Got a little banana on the nose, a little bit of other fruit. Got some caramel.
Yeah, I got the caramel. I got a mix of fruits. I don't know if I could say it was banana, but I got a mix of fruits.
It's that sweetness, like especially like if you put it at the bottom of your lip and just kind of let it roll up and give it get that banana in there. It's real faint, but it's in there.
Yep, I just got it.
So I don't know, man. For 130 proof, it does not smell like 130.
No, but it has a very distinctly different nose than the one we just had. Very distinctive.
Oh, it doesn't drink at 130 either. Man, that is smooth. That is delicious. A little bit of leather. And it doesn't come off as banana on the taste buds. It's coming off more like a really, really faint, like peach or pear or something like that. And peach is not the right word. Apricot or pear. Real sweet.
What I like about the very high proof bourbons, and this is indicative of what we're drinking here, is when it gets to the back of my mouth, that's where I feel a hug. But after that, it's just flavor profile that goes down.
Yep.
Whereas with lower proofs, that hug doesn't happen until after it's past the palate.
Right.
But this is just, it doesn't drink like 130 plus.
No.
Not at all. Not at all.
No, this is a fine pour. They did a really good job with this one. I'm gonna have to hit them up on Facebook or Instagram. Let them know this is a good bourbon. I wonder who picked this. You know, it's weird. Some restaurants and bars or things like that, they take like their clients, like their best clients, and go, "Hey, let's go try this." And you can get some really inconsistency. You know, right? Like you get 3 jack legs that don't drink a lot, or they just come in and spend a lot of money on steak and doing other things. Maybe they don't have the best palate in the world, and you can get some weird off flavor profile stuff. But this is pretty good.
It's very balanced, I think.
Mm-hmm. So, if you were going to make a cocktail, what's your go-to?
If I was going to make a cocktail, it'd probably be Manhattan.
Probably Manhattan?
Probably Manhattan. Second would probably be a vodka martini.
Vodka martini.
Those are the two that were my were go-tos my later on in life. As a youngster, it was a lot of beer and scotch and some whiskey. I haven't had a martini in a long time, but there was a time when I used to drink a lot of gin martinis.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not a big gin fan either.
Well, I enjoy gin. Well, I started to enjoy gin in the heat of the summer with a gin and tonic. And those can be very dangerous.
Yep, I could see that.
And then I graduated to a classic martini, which is made with gin. And then as I got older, I went into the vodka side of it. And I generally, it's very dry, which means that I've got to have a quality vodka.
Right.
And generally, I just do it with a twist of lemon.
So, what vodka do you usually use?
I would look at probably a Stoli or a oh gosh, I'm trying to remember now. It's been such a long time.
Grey Goose, Finlandia.
Grey Goose or a Stoli with a very dry vermouth of very little, not a whole bunch of it.
Gotcha.
I've had bartenders when I've asked for a very dry martini, basically, as I described before, take out a spray bottle, spray the glass, put a bunch of vodka in it, and hand it to me.
So are you an olive guy?
I'm an olive guy. One of my uncles used to be a Gibson guy.
Okay, yeah.
With the pearl onions.
Yep.
And it was funny because he used to imbibe more so than he should have, and it was always a treat to watch him, order a martini or a Gibson, because he would insist he had to have 4 onions.
4 onions.
Had to be 4.
That's a dirty Gibson, man. That's a lot of onion.
Well, that was just the onion. Dirty martinis, of course, as you know, is basically putting that juice into the mix, and that's a whole nother flavor profile in and of itself. Yeah,
I see people who do that with the olives and stuff like that. I'll tell you one. I did see this one place, and I don't remember where it was at, but I want to say it was down in Florida someplace, and they had a martini, but it had pickle juice in it. And I was like, that's just weird.
Yeah, it sounds like just a twist on a dirty martini,
I guess. So, but they put a little pickle on the side, just like half of a dill pickle, and kind of shoved it on the edge, and then it had just
just enough to make it unclear, basically, as it were.
Yeah. So, but I didn't know if that's something you'd tried or anything like that.
I have tried a dirty martini, but it's not something that I've sipped on.
So what's the one, James Bond? It's the Vesper. And how does this Vesper made again? I can't remember.
No, it's not his is a vodka martini shaken, not stirred.
Right, but I thought there was one like in the later ones, the Daniel Craig ones. I thought it was like he called it a Vesper martini. I'll have to look that up too afterwards.
I'm not sure of that.
I don't remember. So I think that's something that Ryan Chesser, if I remember, Ryan was the one that said he was talking about those, and I think that's where he said he got the idea was from one of the more recent James Bonds, like the Daniel Craigs or something like that.
And it could be. I've only watched the more recent ones, one time, so I've got to watch them again.
Right. Yeah. So, So cocktails for you, you would go Manhattan, which I would not do because I don't like vermouth. I would go old fashioned. I do like a good whiskey sour when I get a chance, though.
Too sweet for me.
Too sweet?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't mind an old fashioned, but yeah, to me, the Manhattan or the martini is, and they're both classic cocktails. There's no doubt about it. I have had a couple of different mules, and I enjoyed those.
I think the mule can be a little too sweet sometimes, so I want to add a little something sour to it. Like lime or some more, maybe lime or lemon, or that's the reason I added just a touch of sweet and sour to the ones that I was doing, so that way it would just give it just a little bit of that bitterness from the sour.
Yeah, and I've seen so many different descriptions of what a mule is.
Right.
Russian, Kentucky, whatever you want to call it. So they're all they're all good and different in their own right, and that's not a bad cocktail either.
Gotcha. All right.
Well, what about you? We're talking about what I like for a cocktail.
I said for me, I think that's what, for me, it's going to be probably most likely I'm going to go Manhattan. I mean, an old fashioned up front, and then I would probably then at that point, like I said, go with a whiskey sour or, something, to that nature. I love a good mule, but it has to be good quality ginger ale. I'm not drinking one made with, Canada Dry. So, I think it has to be something like that. The bourbon Raiders turned out good. I mean, that was a mixture of like a lemonade with a little bit of cherry juice.
And as I said before, it was a huge hit. Every time I looked up, somebody was there asking you for a bourbon Raider.
Yeah. So,
or if anybody didn't know what they wanted, what did you serve them?
Bourbon Raider. Well, I was making them in much bigger quantities than I was making anything else. I even made a few lilies, but I do my own take on a lily. Instead of just straight cranberry juice, I always use cran pomegranate.
Ooh.
So it's a little bit tartar, so it gives a little bit more of that, flavor profile that I like. So, I mean, but, everybody's different. Like I said, everybody's got a twist on their own, makeup on a cocktail, and that's always been my thing. So when I do a traditional whiskey sour, I actually shake the egg whites up in there.
Oh.
So when you get an egg white, you get the ice, you get everything in there, and you just shake the hell out of it until the egg white basically, until the ice dissipates, basically. It just disappears. And once the ice disappears, that's so frothy, and then you get it all. It's much better than a standard.
I've ever seen one of those. That makes a lot of sense because that would just add to the profile of a whiskey sour completely.
Yeah.
I might have to try that because that sounds like one I would enjoy.
We'll have to make one for you one day. I don't know if I have any lime juice today. We'll have to check it out, but we can definitely knock that one out. That's easy. But to me, that's the difference between a good whiskey sour and not necessarily just your regular mix and sweet and sour mix. I think you got to use straight lime juice, egg white, put it in there with like 2, maybe 3 ice cubes max, and you shake it till the ice cubes are gone. And then, boom, it should just pour out perfectly in your glass. Drink it. It's ice cold because, absorbed all that. And I usually start with a lot higher proof. So I'll try to get something around that 120 range and let it, kind of really, really marry in with those flavors. And I think it turns out really well in that situation.
Sounds like it would.
So, I don't know. Well, I think that's it for our cocktail episode for today. So if you want to find old Bourbon Barrel Talk, you know how to find us. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. You can email us any questions. We're actually getting ready to do a question episode here in the next, month or two where we're going to answer questions you guys have sent into the inbox. But you can find us at, like I said, Instagram, Twitter. You can email us at bourbonbarreltalk@gmail.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Google, all the good stuff, Amazon. You can find us everywhere where podcasts are offered. This is Scott and Dan signing off. Peace out.
Peace out.